They say a week in politics is long, but they should have added that it can be just as long in the police service. This week, the calendars at Jogoo House and the one atop Mount Kenya were synchronized, and we're talking about heady activities. So, convict Gilbert Masengeli completes a seemingly contemptuous outing in the IG's office as Douglas Kanja, the substantive Inspector General of Police, takes over. The transition in the high office of the Mount Kenya kingpin is seemingly taking longer, though, 2,000 Jurin-Cheke elders later. But seriously, what is going on between Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Interior PS Professor Kithure Kindiki? And further up, what is going on between President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua? It's a night of many questions, and who knows, answers. Later on My Take, I will be reading out the contempt report card as completed by convicted police senior Gilbert Masengeli. On Kaikai's kicker, a kick of a tear gas canister direct into the in-tray of Inspector General Douglas Kanja. On Sam Sense, are benchmarking tours making sense for MCAs 45 billion shillings later? On Jamila's memo, it's 250,000 steps from Kenya to Germany. The News Gang is here.
Gilbert Masengeli is sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. Mr. Masengeli is ordered to submit himself to the Commissioner General of Kenya Prisons to ensure that he is to be committed to a prison facility to commence serving sentence of the imprisonment imposed. In the event that he does not submit himself to the Commissioner General of Prison Service as ordered, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Interior must take all steps that are necessary and permissible in law to ensure Mr. Gilbert Masengeli is committed to prison.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program tonight. The hashtag online is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya. We're looking forward to your views. What a week it has been, folks. In 1 week, he's been convicted. He's been sentenced to 6 months. He was required to, or given some reprieve to go back to court in a week. If not, then his sentence took effect today.
Yes.
So this evening, the now Deputy Inspector General of Police remains a convict and is due to serve his jail sentence of 6 months, barring anything. But it's also been a week when we have seen quite a bit of back and forth between two heads of important arms of the criminal justice system, Jamila, because a lot happened since the sentencing.
Yvonne, I remember something we talked about a few days ago when we said that if you or I or Linus or Gituku or Robert, who's our director, or Edgar, who's here, or Nganga, or Yula, who's our sign language interpreter, is asked to appear in court for whatever reason and then does not show up, that's contempt of court. Mara moja, you've not shown up. Unaweza utashikwa kwa sababu umekiuka agizo la mahakama mara moja, Mkenya wa kawaida. And I think responsibility utashikwa na polisi. Utabebwa.
That's right.
Umekataa kufika mahakamani, umekiuka amri ya mahakama. And I think when someone is in a leadership position, as the former acting IG Gilbert Masengeli was, I think huo uzito ni zaidi in terms of kubali kufuata amri ya mahakama, especially the office he holds. So when the court asks you to appear before it, not once, not twice, not 3 times, mara saba, and you keep ignoring it, various reasons being given. In fact, at some point, he sent his deputy. And I remember Lina saying that something like that is person-specific.
Yeah.
Gilbert Masengeli, not his deputy, not anyone else.
Not the office
Not the office he holds, him as an individual.
Right.
And then he sent one of his deputies to represent him. Yoni Madarao, I think, in the eyes of the court. Why was he being called? He was being asked to appear to explain the disappearance of the 3 individuals allegedly abducted in Kitengela in August. That is Bob and the 2 brothers, Bob Michael Mishen Njagi and Jamil and Nadim Longton. And he was supposed to come there and say wako wapi. Aseme hatujui waliko. Like today, the new IG just said we have no idea where they are. Yeah, investigations are underway. But he refused to show up. And he made matters worse because of the fact that he refused to show up. Maswali yanaibuka kwani hawa watu wako wapi? Why doesn't the IG want to come and explain to the family and the court where these people are? And that is, I think, what pushed and compelled Lawrence Mugambi to order that he be arrested and jailed for 6 months. But he still gave him a week.
Yeah. Let's listen to the judge.
The acting Inspector General of Police can redeem himself and comply by availing himself before this court in person to answer to the issues he has been avoiding in default. The sentence shall automatically become effective.
And that became effective
effective today by 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And that is when the scramble came in that he wants sitting with the judge, he wants to apologize. You could have done it last week. You could have done it the week before. You could have done it between the 1st and the 7th summons that you refused to honor. And then now came this whole thing of security, Lawrence Mugambi being withdrawn. And the fact that that happening the same time as when he is the judge who sentenced former acting IG Gilbert Masengeli to jail for 6 months really raises questions. So much so that the Chief Justice herself, Martha Koome, had to speak up about it. I don't know if we have the soundbite here. If we do, maybe we can look for it.
Yeah, we will get it.
So there was that thing of kwanini yake. Oko, he tried to explain himself and say, well, they were taken away for training and then replaced. But really, there were a lot of questions raised, Yvonne.
Yeah.
And the fact that now, because we have a new IG, maybe ile protection he thought he had when he was acting IG, now that it's been lifted, hakuna anymore, that there's someone else who's the substantive office holder sworn in by the president, maybe ndo ukweli umemdhihirikia kwamba now, my friend, what you were doing was wrong. He wants to go on, but it's still after the fact, Yvonne. A lot has happened, and the main thing is, till now, where are those three? Where are the two brothers? Where is Bob?
Right.
Are they alive? Are they dead? Are they arrested? Where are they? That question has still not been answered.
And I think that's the important thing to remember. And like we said at the start of this program, a week is a long time because in that week between sentencing and everything, and then the judge was to find himself in a bit of a tight spot. And this announcement about the withdrawal of his security or reorganization or refresher training, as they called it, was to be announced by the Chief Justice herself.
Lawrence Mugambi is entitled to a police driver and a bodyguard. Those two personnel were withdrawn yesterday. They were disarmed and withdrawn, told to report to their headquarters. All our efforts to get in touch with them to restore the personnel to Justice Mugambi were unresponded to.
So, Sam, what a week, huh?
Very interesting developments that we have witnessed, and it's also quite unfortunate that through it all, the disobedience of court orders remains the hallmark of most of these conversations, because after, well, there's 7 or 8 summons for him to appear before the court to just say what he knew about this particular issue. That doesn't happen. And of course, despite the conviction, being found guilty of contempt of court and eventually the sentencing, still you don't see a lot of movement. And to the fact that after being found guilty of contempt of court, sentenced to 6 months, despite that being suspended for, say, a week, and then you go ahead as the person in command of the police and you withdraw 2 officers who are serving the judge who was hearing your matter. I don't know what to call that, because that's conflict of interest, really, for you to really make certain movements. And I know the former acting Inspector General of Police gave 2 statements indicating that the mandate of the command of the police is in the Inspector General. And actually on the day he did, he also shared another statement late in the afternoon reclarifying what exactly he had indicated during the day. And that should tell you something, that if you keep insisting on something, then probably there's something wrong with the essence of what exactly you're saying, because you cannot continue to insist that I have the command of the police. That is very clear. Everyone knows. And that is why, in the first place, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya was issuing a statement complaining about the conduct of the National Police Service in the particular matter of 2 officers that were supposed to be serving the judge. So who are you telling that the command is with you? It is very clear that's why they're issuing that statement. Secondly, it is so unfortunate that this is coming at a time that we lost a magistrate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Some 3 months ago, I think it was early June.
Yeah.
That is magistrate.
15th, I think, just a couple of days before the protests began.
Yes, yeah. By the name Monica Kivuti.
Yeah.
And of course,
at the hands of...
You remember the situation. She was dealing with a matter, the spouse of a police officer. The police officer is said to have shot at the judge. And then, of course, the officers that were in court responded, and he lost his life in that situation. The magistrate was taken to hospital and died, I think, 1 or 2 days later. And I remember the Chief Justice saying that because of the incident of what has happened, they now even need more resources to finance enhancement of security within the courtrooms. This is not the time to withdraw the security of a judicial officer, whether it's Lawrence Mugambi or whoever it is. Yeah. It is not the time, and I hope that the new Inspector General will actually make good or correct the situation that there is here, and also to even talk about that the former acting Inspector General of Police was seeking to be heard by the court this morning at a time that I don't know the status, if the judge is still well facilitated in terms of security and to be driven. So you want him to get to the courtroom through what means?
Here's the thing, and I want us to listen to Gilbert Masengeli now on just what you're talking about, tigers versus, tigritude. Let's listen.
But the fact is that it is normal for officers to be taken to VIP protection courses and also change of things. They were not recalled that he remained without security. They were replaced immediately. So that was just an ill-intended cause of alarm.
Well, so, Sam, you present an interesting scenario, which would be that this is the judge who convicted and sentenced him. Yep. And then he did what he calls reorganization. Curiously, by the way, at least in all of those two statements, I'm not sure that he talked about reorganization of others. So out of all of the VIP, all of the police officers who guard VIPs, it was just these two that needed VIP training, and they just happened to be assigned to the judge who had previously convicted him. And then interestingly now today, he's asking the court to go and be heard before this very same judge whose security he withdrew just days before. I mean, Linus, this is messy.
No, it's absolutely messy when it comes to the state of the rule of law in the country. And I think the first thing that I would really want to say is the courage of the judge has been admirable. This has not been an easy case, not in a country where executive defiance of court orders is known to have happened before. Now, coming down to the specifics around Gilbert Masengeli, look, it takes a very long time for a police officer to rise up the ranks all the way to where Gilbert Masengeli is. Gilbert Masengeli is now a DIG, that's Deputy Inspector General of Police. And that is what he was at the time of, committing this contempt of court. He was the acting Inspector General of Police. And if you look at his journey, it's a long journey. It's not easy to rise all the way up, and that needs to be acknowledged. Those who actually know him say very good things about him in terms of his command abilities, operational abilities. And you need to know that the administration police service is very key in exactly that, making especially things like border patrol, ensuring safety of government buildings, safety of critical installations. And Gilbert Masengeli, as a police officer, has a story, and an admirable one at that, of rising all the way up. But then comes this environment suddenly where he is a focal point. He's the acting Inspector General of Police. And I'm just trying to analyze what could have gone, what could have happened.
Yeah.
And in my view, as Inspector General of Police, is a position of a lot of power. There's a lot of consultations, a lot of serious calls, that if you are not careful, you would actually think you are in the highest peak of any mountain. And what I suspect happened is this officer, Gilbert Masengeli, who cut his name and shaped his career in up the ranks of the Administration Police Service, became a recipient of horrible advice, and in the process made a terrible mistake. A terrible mistake in the sense that he defied court summons. And look at how lenient the court was.
Gracious, yeah.
How gracious Justice Mugambi has been. And remember, there's this window that he opened, which he didn't need to. He could have sent him to contempt straight away from the moment he pronounced this judgment. But then he gave him a chance, and remember the quote we've just played where he says that the acting IG can redeem himself and comply by availing himself before this court in person. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's not like Justice Mugambi is waiting to grab this guy and put him in the back of some Subaru and abduct him or something like that. It doesn't happen that way. It's a court of law. You're going to have a very civilized conversation with a judge. And this judge, you can actually see him walking carefully.
Yeah.
Trying to respect the place of the executive. That, okay, guys, please, yes, we are 3 arms of government, but we have said that we are all served by, we are all under one constitution. So another 7 days. And what does this guy do? More defiance and pretends to actually explain and do things like withdrawing the bodyguards of Justice Mugambi. So what will happen? I mean, I think Masengeli and his backers are relying on the physical impracticability of actually having a junior police officer arresting him and taking him to jail. So now that's how impunity looks like. Impunity works that way, it works with physical sizes and force, and who can touch me. And I think that's the atmosphere right now, both inside and outside the mind of Gilbert Masengeli and those around him. They're thinking in physical terms. Who can touch me? Which junior officer is that can throw me out of into jail? But look, there's a moral issue here.
Yeah.
How are you looking? I mean, you saw, and look at this senior cops, including Inspector General Kanja, who took oath of office today. They all lift the Bible and they all swear by the Constitution. I mean, why cheapen the oath? Why take an oath that you don't mean? Because this was something really simple.
It was, yeah.
It was so simple. Yeah. The judge was extremely gracious. Now, he may not arrest you. I mean, maybe you are currently, powerful and no police officer can touch you. But remember the punishment God gave to Cain. And I don't like quoting the Bible because it's been misused in our national affairs. But there's that story of Abel and Cain. You remember the mark on the forehead?
Yeah.
Yeah. You walk around and that's what...
mark of shame.
Yeah, mark of shame.
Yeah.
And that is what Masengeli has. And I think he should really weigh that versus the good career. Because we must acknowledge, you don't just wake up and become an IG or DIG. You rise through the ranks, through hard work, through very rigorous steps in the career. And he has to compare that journey that he has done, the good job he's done along our boundaries, in whether we're talking of northeastern or the coast. He's been there. He's a decorated officer who decides to take a wrong turn. And I think that's really regrettable.
I think, Yvonne, on the same, like all the good things that Gilbert Masengeli has done, he had done them probably not in the public eye, not for us to know that this is who he is and all the things he had done. But then now, the Gilbert Masengeli that Kenyans know now is one who defies court orders, is one who refuses to answer questions, is one who is defiant and rebellious, is one who is standing in front of the court and the law and giving it a big slap in terms of, I don't care what you want me to do, I will not do it. Because I keep remembering one line from a statement that he released after now there was all this hue and cry about the security being withdrawn. And he said this: the National Police Service totally rejects attempts to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the operational and functional independence of the police. No person may direct the IG with respect to the employment, assignment, promotion, suspension, or dismissal of any police officer. And he said, constitutionally, the only offices that are constitutionally required to have security is the president, and I think the deputy president. You know, he listed those. In fact, you're saying for judges and such officers, ni kama tunawafanyia favor kuwapatia hiyo security. But then now when you look at instances like the magistrate who was killed, and in fact, during this whole week when all this was happening, there was an incident that was reported in Mombasa, where there was a Qadi, he was called Qadi Abdulaziz Maalim Mohammed. He was threatened on 16th of September during a visit from a member of parliament, Mishimboko, at the Mombasa Qadi's court. The MP stormed into the Qadi's chamber, causing commotion and disrupting the court proceeding over a decision the Qadi had already rendered regarding a case involving her alleged relative and which the matter had been concluded. Ilikuwa imeshaamuliwa, ilikuwa imeisha. But then now, because of, I think, the fact that the image you're painting and the picture you're showing is that the judges and the jobs that they do and the decisions that they give and are not really important, that you can defy it as you want, so much so that a member of parliament has the audacity to go and attack a Qadi in his office because of a decision that was already rendered. I mean, we have avenues. Ukitaka kulalamika kuhusu a decision that's been rendered, go to the Court of appeal the decision, follow the procedure. But then now when you see an IG, an acting IG, kupuza amri ya mahakama, kiasi cha kwamba what we saw happen, then what does that say? Inafungua mlango kwamba hawa jamaa, whatever they say does not really matter.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that just again paints the picture about the safety of those within the judiciary. and to be fair, the police ought to keep everybody safe, from judges to Bob Njagi, to Jamil Aslam Longton, to Peter Macharia, whose story we have covered tonight, that was done by Gatete. So this is not about a favor to any particular group of people. I mean, I think the story here is that the police are responsible to protect lives of all Kenyans, you know, in the country. But this whole issue has brought again the issue of the authority or respect for the judiciary and the judges. And I want us to listen to an interesting soundbite from Justice Anthony Mrima after he was sworn in as a member of the JSC, right? Again, reaffirming, I think, the independence of the judiciary and you know, court of laws and opinions that must be respected. Let's listen.
The defense of the independence of the judiciary should not just end with issuing statements. More robust steps must be taken to ensure that those culpable of undermining the institution of the judiciary are dealt with.
Yeah, and if we can, just as we, I want to come to you, Sam, to talk about, I think the relationship we've seen between the judiciary and the executive, perhaps over the last 2 years or so. If we can, I'd like us to listen to Martha Koome that came just before Justice Anthony Mrima, who was also talking about restating the mandate of the JSC and the role of the judiciary in the country in defense of the Constitution. That's 14, the one that was just before Anthony Mrima. This was at the same event that they were at together.
I think we needed it. We needed a boost of energy to restate the mandate of the Judicial Service Commission is to defend the independence of the judiciary. And of course, we all know independence goes with accountability.
And you see what's happened between you know, the Deputy Inspector of General of Police, convicted police senior Gilbert Masengeli, is not the first time that we have seen, you know, the judiciary needing to assert its independence and its role in protecting the rule of law and democracy in the country, Sam.
Right. And as you progress on that, I was just looking at the statement that there's two statements that were issued by the former Acting Inspector General Gilbert Masengeli. And the first one, I think it was on 16th of September, he said that the IG is responsible for the security of all Kenyans, regardless of their status in the society, and then said, nonetheless, the IG may accord additional security detail to specific persons. And of course, he was talking about the particular question about Justice Mugambi. Then in paragraph 4, he said that such was the case. This is starting this part where he says that the National Police Service, who can be reassigned, the officers can be reassigned at the sole discretion of the IG, and such was the case for Justice Mugambi's security. And then say the two officers, being general duty officers, were recalled for purposes of attending that VIP courses. You realize that in that statement, he did not disclose if there was replacement. The only thing he said is that we are aware that suitable arrangements were made to ensure that Honorable Mugambi's security was always assured. That is not quite clear what exactly that means. But then the statement that was issued later on, let me just find that particular part, because he was referring to that they were now replaced with other officers from the Judicial Police Unit. It raises questions. At what time did this information become apparent to him? Because if in the first statement that you're responding, you're purporting to respond to the Chief Justice, you're not making clear what exactly is the action that has been taken. But later on, things are very clear that you have now realized what exactly happened, to an extent even sort of lecturing Kenyans on the role of the police, including telling them that the reason why you're not able to attend court is because you're attending to matters of national security, different parts of the country. I mean, that statement does not really resolve that question that was being asked by the Judicial Service Commission. But as you talk about adherent to court orders, and it has not just been about people being summoned or people being told to do certain things. You remember the question of the former Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who was involved in that matter of Miguna, who was deported, and the order was that he be issued with a Kenyan passport and allowed to travel back into the country, whether with one or not. I think actually one of the directives was that he would be issued with a Kenyan passport once arriving in the country. And I think he was only saved by the Court of Appeal when they suspended the implementation of that finding by the High Court. But you recall that even in this particular year and last year, there has been several court orders that have been disobeyed by either the government or institutions of government. Case in point, you recall that Finance Act of 2023, which is now at the Court of Appeal after finding of its unconstitutionality. Actually, it's at the Supreme Court after finding of a constitutionality by the Court of Appeal. There was a stay order that was issued back in July. I think it was the end of June 2023, and that was that it should not be implemented. But instead, the government went ahead, specifically the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority went ahead to implement the doubled VAT on fuel of 8%, I mean from 8% to 16%, up until the High Court itself now stayed cleared that stay and allowed the government to continue collecting revenue. But then there was a question of, did EPRA ignore the orders of the court? Were they in contempt of the court? And I think that matter was found to be what Linus may say moot, if I can use that word.
I'm spending too much time with around here.
Then, of course, there's a recent matter about the road maintenance levy fund, or the levy itself, the fuel levy. You recall that around July 10th, a day before the cabinet was dismissed, there was a document that came out way later. I think it came out on July 15th, claiming that on July 10th, there had been a gazettement of a revised road maintenance levy from 18 shillings to 25 shillings, signed by Kipchumba Murkomen, who was dismissed from cabinet by the president on the 11th of July. But then that matter was taken to court. And the court stated that stay implementation of this particular levy until this matter is heard and determined. So you realize that as late as 14th of September, which is last week on Saturday rather, the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority issued a new price list of fuel, that is diesel and petroleum, that includes that road maintenance levy of 25 shillings. Never mind there's an existing court order. And there are so many other things that we can actually talk about, including that Finance Act of 2023, which was found to be unconstitutional by the Court of Appeal. And of course, the judgment takes effect immediately. It has never been implemented. Never mind that I think the stay orders came just recently from the Supreme Court.
So there was a period there.
For a period of nearly 1 month. And I remember speaking to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, who was saying that he's waiting on the advice of lawyers. And the question to him was, so when does a court order become effective? Is it when the lawyers agree, or is it when the judges or the court pronounces itself? And it should be when the court pronounces itself.
And if I recall that judgment, it did say that this should the orders would take effect immediately. But yet, let's take a look then at sort of the evolution of the stance of the executive, particularly of the president, with respect to this matter of the rule of law. During his inauguration in September of 2022, he praised the judiciary, saying it was the country's biggest constitutional dividend. This was at a time he was promising much in terms of independence of the judiciary. Listen.
It is also appropriate to celebrate our judiciary for sustaining its tradition of boldly giving much-needed guidance, especially in allaying post-election anxieties and resolving grievances in a sensitive, credible, and authoritative manner. Judiciary's articulation of the aspirations and standards enshrined in the Constitution has deepened our democracy and institutionalized our rule of law. Our judiciary is now, without a doubt, Kenya's biggest constitutional dividend.
And of course, a year later, during the launch of the State of Judiciary report, President William Ruto promised that his executive will be the one that respects court orders.
For the avoidance of doubt, I reiterate my commitment and that of the government of Kenya to live up to our pledge to the people of Kenya that we intend to empower the judiciary and the criminal justice system as required by the Constitution, as well as respect the decisions and orders of the courts as they relate to the executive. Expect no more or no less.
I want to take you back to 4 years ago when he was then Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And interestingly, he was then calling out public officers for disobeying court orders.
The foundation of our nation is the foundation built on the rule of law. And every public officer have their responsibility, individual and collective, to make sure that this country is built on the firm foundation of the rule of law. And I want to ask every public officer to ensure that they play their part in ensuring that there is respect for the rule of law in our nation. And even when we go to the realm of court orders, it is the responsibility of every public officer, individually and as a government. The Jubilee administration respects the rule of law and respects every court order issued by a competent court of law in Kenya. And we want to say categorically that any public officer who disobeys the law, who disobeys court orders, they will carry their cross individually. They will be held personally responsible for violating the law or violating any court order. The slide to anarchy and impunity will begin the day we don't respect the rule of law and we don't respect court orders in our country.
So he was quite categorical on that 4 years ago, 1 year ago, and 2 years ago. But yet, at the start of this year, that's in January of 2024, the president now said he would be selective about which court orders he would obey.
We support the independence of the judiciary, but corrupt judicial officials working with those who vested interests that are benefiting from money stolen from NHIF, who want to perpetuate judicial tyranny and judicial impunity. We will deal with them. We will fight with them. We will not allow them. They will not go far.
So perhaps, you know, just some context, especially when he was talking about judicial independence during inauguration, it was because the courts, the Supreme Court of Kenya, had just reaffirmed his win at the ballot. And, you know, he even went on to actually say that. But then now when they rule not in his favor, he's then saying that any of those that go against his bottom-up economic agenda principles, you know, now we hear of corrupt judges and judicial tyranny and impunity. Jamila.
Do you remember also during that swearing in, I think one of his first acts as president was swearing in the judges, who had not been sworn in during the President Uhuru Kenyatta's time. Akawapisha mapema, you know. And
it was his first act as president, right?
It was his first act as president. There was a whole event at State House where they were all there and they were all sworn in with their family.
Same day.
It was a big event. Was it
the same day?
Same day.
Yes. Sworn in, I think, the following day.
The following day. Yeah. Their families, and it was his first major act. And they were like, okay, is the judiciary going to bed with the executive? You know, asking yourself those questions, everyone. But then something that happened this week before Linus comes in brings to the fore how bad things are. Before the Chief Justice, Martha Koome, spoke at the steps of the High Court and talked about what is happening with Justice Mugambi, she was meeting foreign envoys and heads of mission. And when she was there, she talked about how they are unable to perform their duties ya kuwapa wananchi haki as they should because of the fact that they do not have a budget. What they asked for versus what they were given, it was a huge difference. I think they had asked for about 44.9 billion shillings and in this financial year, and they were given 21.6 billion shillings. And she was talking about how difficult it would be for them to be able to perform their duties as they should because there's no money. They talk about technology, how they can do e-filing for Kenyans can file their cases online and things like that they're unable to do because they have no money. But the fact that alikuwa nalalamika hapo before the foreign missions, heads of missions, and tries to show you that this is bad, the fact that she's actually having to do that. I think maybe you can listen to her speaking. It's bite number 12, Robert, and you can continue with this conversation.
Because we have even witnessed incidences where we are being shot at when we are doing our work in court. We are in a state where judges are being threatened, they are being stalked, their security is being withdrawn, and that keeps me awake.
And it's important to note that this defiance of court orders did not start with this administration. The previous one had numerous ones. I can just mention a few.
Of which this president was a part.
He was the deputy president. In 2018, remember Miguna's deportation? The High Court in February 2018 ruled that Miguna should be allowed back into the country after being deported.
Weren't there 15 court orders, Linus? Remind me, in the case of Miguna?
Oh, yes.
There were 15 court orders.
The government
all defied.
Repeatedly ignored orders from Justice Luka Kimaru to return his passport and allow him back into the country.
Right.
Miguna was denied entry when he attempted to return. You know, there was all that. Then there was a swearing in of the judges in 2020, 2021. In 2020, June, the High Court ruled that President Uhuru Kenyatta should swear in 41 judges nominated by the JSC. The president refused to do so, citing concerns over the integrity of some nominees. There was a housing levy case in 2019, in April, when the Employment and Labor Relations Court issued an order suspending the mandatory housing levy under the government's Big Four agenda. The court ruled that the levy should not be deducted from workers' salaries until the case was resolved. Despite this, the government made several moves to proceed with the implementation. Remember, in 2021, there was a return of the Cuban doctors. The same Employment and Labor Relations Court ordered the government to return Kenyan doctors who had been replaced by Cuban doctors during a bilateral agreement between Kenya and Cuba. The Ministry of Health continued to employ the Cuban doctors despite the ruling. And then remember the Huduma number case in 2020? In January, the High Court barred the government from rolling out the Huduma number cards without enacting a comprehensive data protection framework. Despite the order, the government moved forward with aspects of the Huduma number registration, albeit later slowing down the rollout. And this one, I'm sure we all remember, it's the last one I'll talk about, is the dissolution of Parliament in 2020.
Yes.
Remember in September of that year, the then Chief Justice David Maraga advised the President of Kenya to dissolve Parliament for failing to enact the two-thirds gender rule as mandated by the Constitution. The President did not act on this advice, and Parliament continued functioning despite the ruling.
So, Yani, even Parliament was declared unconstitutional.
Yeah. And we ignored it and moved on swiftly.
So there seems to be a trend in this country when orders and are made that are unfavorable to the government. Then you hear impunity, judicial tyranny. Tell me, what is the difference between what President Ruto was saying in January of this year, in fact, essentially accusing some judges of being corrupt, and what President Uhuru Kenyatta did when he refused to swear in those 6 Court of Appeal judges, saying exactly the same thing, that he had certain allegations of corruption. Everybody told President Uhuru Kenyatta then, great, you've got some evidence, take it to the JSC. Fast forward, you have the exact same statements that are being made, blind allegations against some judges, all judges, we don't know which ones, from somebody as powerful as the president who claims to have information of judges, and he says others who are exchanging money that then denies Kenyans access to health, because he was talking about those laws there. What is the difference? It's exactly the same thing. Again, today, if the president has any evidence against any judge, he can take that to the JSC. The JSC is not powerless. In fact, the president does have quite some good representation at the JSC, right? Up to 3 people who are appointed by the president himself. So once again, it's history repeating itself. The executive versus the judiciary all over again.
The situation here is that of our political class still struggling to fit into the post-2010 constitutional dispensation. What we see is a lot of hangovers of the Kenya of yesteryears, when power was absolute, when president was king, and his courtiers were small kings as well, and they could do what they wished. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 is a very, very annoying document to political power, because it was written, and I always say this, it was written with President Daniel Arap Moi and Jomo Kenyatta in the side mirror, The drafters wrote this thing bearing in mind all the worst case scenarios. And so it's a bit like a very messy net, and politicians will struggle with this, because you see them trying to do what previous presidents used to do. This is not possible under this current dispensation. And there's a lot of accountability. What we are seeing now, and I think this really should go to the uniformed officers, who currently, some of them carry out really unlawful instructions. You see, the law will outlast people. The law will outlast individuals. Regimes come and go. I mean, when you look at Gilbert Masengeli, I'm very sure this is not the first president he's saluting. And probably this is not the last president who is saluting. So if you look at it, you need to be careful that which one outlasts the other. And we have a very, very stubborn constitutional dispensation. By the way, like we saw with the BBI suckers, it's not even easy to change this constitution. So you can't just wake up and do anything. And I think the country right now has a lot of has a lot to thank the judiciary for, and especially specific judges who have put their lives basically in the line in interpreting the law correctly, and insisting, you know, that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is the charter that now governs all of us. In fact, if you want to pass a law, have you done public participation? Have you asked the people that you want to, that you are ruling, that you're going to do things this way? So the bottom line, and I want to go to the two things that President Ruto said in the past. The slide to anarchy and impunity will begin the day we don't respect the rule of law and the day we don't respect court orders in our country. Yeah. The president needs to know that that slide is in progress right now. It's going on at Jogoo House, it's going on wherever else. Masengeli was advised to defy these orders.
In his own executive as well.
Yes, in his own, exactly. And then he had spoken about something to do with, is that the judiciary being...
Our biggest constitutional dividend?
Our biggest constitutional dividend.
Yeah. It
still remains a big constitutional dividend. Whether at the time it was quoted for upholding the election results, that is accurate actually. And it is our biggest constitutional dividend right now, which is why we should respect those decisions. And lastly, Yvonne, again, and I say this with a lot of pity to uniformed officers who take unlawful instructions, it'll catch up at some point. Unfortunately, accountability is like edible oil. You remember the one that is now floating, and it turns out that it was unfit for human consumption.
Right.
That's exactly how law and justice works.
Yeah.
And it'll catch up with you, as President Ruto, Deputy President, then said, you'll carry your cross as an individual.
Yeah. And in fact, that individual now has the title convict, Gilbert Masengeli, which is, there's many law-abiding citizens in the country who are not convicts. Sam, as we close this topic.
Right, and I think at the end of all this conversation, there's still the side of responsibility and the side of the judiciary. Yeah, because even as the Chief Justice says that judicial independence but comes with accountability, they have a role to play. And I remember I covered her interview when she was interviewing for the position she holds today of Chief Justice. And I think it was on 28th of April 2021. And she was asked about court orders and how they were not being followed that time. And she said one of the issues that she thought needed to be done is that under the NCAJ, National Council on Administration of Justice, needed to have a department that manages or that pursues implementation of court orders. She made that commitment during that interview. She has been the chairperson since she was appointed up until now. I think I'll have to dig and see if indeed NCAJ has a department that pursues implementation of court orders. But at the same time, you look at the judiciary and even what she was saying before that meeting of donors and saying of how they have suffered budget cuts. You recall that around towards the end of June, start of July, the National Treasury and the government of the Republic of Kenya announced that there are going to be budget cuts across the government. That is both at the national level and at the counties. And some of those institutions that are going to be affected are the counties, losing some 20 billion shillings, and the judiciary, I think it was losing about 2 billion shillings. I could be mistaken on the actual figure. But then after that, we saw even the Chief Justice, it should be about 3rd of July, issuing a statement and saying that they were going to scrap off or suspend the recruitment of judges of the Court of Appeal coming from the situation that they were now in because they didn't have the resources, therefore they are not able to recruit new judges. So there's a question that needs to be asked there. Once Parliament has allocated resources to the judiciary, which is money that should go to the judiciary fund, can the National Executive come and take it back?
Yeah.
When government allocates resources, equitable share of revenue to the counties of 400 billion shillings. Can the government, through Parliament, come and take it back? And I think there's such a conversation going on at the Senate because National Assembly has passed an amendment bill to the act that provides for the resources of up to 400 billion shillings. So it's also a question that judiciary will have to respond to, because if you are to defend your independence, which is financial, but also how you conduct yourselves, it has also to apply equally. There has to be fairness being seen. And then finally, even how the judiciary itself is accountable. I have seen conversations about, and even cases being taken to court, about the benefits that should be going to the judicial officers. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission complaining that actually judges who also are represented in the Judicial Service Commission should not be the ones who are deciding the terms of service, because they're state officers. And of course, the case went to the judges, to the judiciary,
to decide. And
the judges won in that particular matter. Of course, the bench, the judges are interested in benefits within the court. So, of course, that's a matter that has already been decided to say that judges should actually get, are they car allowances or what you call it? So that's the conditions of work.